Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series on the Royal Navy battleship line. This is the Tier 7 King George V class of battleships. The King George V class of battleships were a class of 5 battleships built for the Royal Navy between 1937 and 1940. The 5 ships are the HMS King George V, HMS Prince of Wales, HMS Duke of York, HMS Anson, and HMS Howe. The King George V stands out among British battleships for a number of notable, albeit unfortunate, design choices. The class is the only class of British battleships built that were equipped with 14-inch guns, and the only class to employ quad gun turrets in its construction. The choice to use 14-inch guns came as a result of the ongoing Washington Naval Treaty and a cap on displacement of new battleships at 35,000 long tons. The initial design called for 15-inch guns and 3 triple mounts, but the ship would never have been equipped with them, as the designers were content with a 12-gun broadside from 3 quadruple gun mounts. After realizing that having 3 quadruple gun mounts increased top weight too much and reduced armor too much, the B turret, or number 2 turret, was replaced with a dual gun mount instead of a quadruple gun mount. The choice of armament proved to be an issue for the ships, as the quadruple turrets proved unreliable due to the safety measures taken to prevent the flashing of gunpowder in the elevators that transported the powder from the magazines to the guns. Cramped internal spaces and too tight of tolerances also led to multiple failures of these turrets during combat. The 14-inch gun itself, though, proved to be a very good naval rifle. The shells it fired were very potent and capable of penetrating armor very well while carrying a large bursting charge for a 14-inch shell. The secondary armament of 5¼ Mark I dual-purpose guns were not perfect either. With a designed rate of fire of 10 to 12 rounds per minute, they never actually achieved this rate of fire because of the shell weight being greater than the hoists were capable of lifting efficiently. They only ever saw 7 to 8 rounds per minute. They also had a problem with their training and elevating mechanisms that proved to be too slow to effectively engage the faster aircraft of World War II. That's not to say that they didn't actually shoot down aircraft. In fact, the HMS Prince of Wales is credited with damaging 10 high-level bombers during an engagement with Italian aircraft in the Mediterranean. It should be noted that until late in World War II, that issue was actually not fixed, and once they finally fixed it, they proved to work just fine. The overall design focus of the King George V class was on overall protection, both from torpedoes and shell fire. An attempt to protect the ships from aircraft was also made through the use of a multi-layer deck system that consisted of a thick outer weather deck, which is this wooded deck here. There is I think it was 1.5 inches of steel on top, with the wood under on top of that, followed up by a main armor deck below it, which was significantly thicker and obviously made out of armor steel, and then below that was a splinter deck designed to catch any fragments that made it through the main armor deck. The main armor belt is external and very thick and is visible on the ship. In fact, if you look here in game, you can see it. It's this little jut out here. That is actually the main armor belt. It is massive and it is very thick, and it extends very far below the waterline, which was part of the design of the ship. The propulsion system consisted of fuel oil-fired boilers and high-pressure steam turbines. However, much like the quadruple 14-inch gun mounts and the 5¼ Mark I dual-purpose guns, these proved to be very unreliable in use due to high seawater content in the fuel oil, which didn't burn as efficiently. It would be the end of World War II before the British Admiralty finally had a solution to this problem, and the ships were able, once they had the boilers fixed, they were actually able to reliably burn the lower quality fuel oil without any long-term reliability issues. In terms of service history, of the 5 ships, only one was lost, which was the HMS Prince of Wales. The HMS Prince of Wales was sunk by Japanese aircraft in the South China Sea in 1941. The other 4 served until 1958 and 1959, when they were sold for scrap and broken up. The history of the class begins with the famous Battle of the Denmark Strait. That would be HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Hood, along with 6 destroyers, being sent out to find and sink the German battleship Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen. During the engagement, problems with the 14-inch quadruple gun mounts forced a retreat of the Prince of Wales under smoke cover, and it would be another King George V class that would actually begin the engagement again with Bismarck. Once they found Bismarck again, and obviously after the famous Swordfisher attack that jammed the rudder and allowed the British forces to catch up, it would be King George V herself, along with the HMS Rodney, which was a Nelson-class battleship. They were able to fire upon and hit Bismarck repeatedly until the ship was ultimately scuttled by her crew. In 32 minutes of firing, the King George V fired 335 14-inch shells at Bismarck. Prince of Wales would be restationed to the Pacific Theater after the Battle of Denmark Strait, and once there, she became the flagship of Force Z under Vice Admiral Sir Tom Phillips. They sortied to the British Malaya to intercept a Japanese landing force when they were spotted by a Japanese submarine on the way. Force Z was rapidly attacked by Japanese aircraft, and during the engagement, Prince of Wales was hit with 4 airdrop torpedoes and a 500-kilogram bomb, which caused the ship to capsize and sink. The remaining 4 ships served as convoy escorts until the Battle of North Cape. All 4 ships were assigned to the Mediterranean Sea, where they escorted the surrendered Italian Navy to Malta. When news of the German battleship Scharnhorst leaving port to intercept convoys reached the British Admiralty, the HMS Duke of York was sent to the Norwegian waters to escort convoys to Russia. Along with HMS Belfast, HMS Norfolk, HMS Sheffield, the Duke of York engaged Scharnhorst. A hit from the Duke of York hit a boiler room and forced Scharnhorst to slow down. This allowed British destroyers to launch a successful torpedo attack on Scharnhorst, which caused further damage. It also allowed the Duke of York to close to within 10,400 yards and begin firing on Scharnhorst again, and ultimately Scharnhorst was sunk. King George V and Howe would end the war in the Pacific as part of the famous Task Force 57, where they shelled several targets around the Pacific to include Okinawa and some factories in Japan. At the end of the war, King George V and Duke of York were present at the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay. All that history is great. How do they play in-game? Well, King George V represents probably one of the most fun Royal Navy battleships in the game to play. She has a good combination of armor, firepower, anti-aircraft, concealment, and maneuverability that make her a very worthy adversary for other Tier 7 battleships. While the 14-inch guns do not have the raw damage potential and output of the 15-inch or 16-inch guns that other nation battleships have at this tier, they are not to be underestimated. For one, the high explosive shell damage is nothing short of ridiculous, and the AP is no slouch either. The 25-second reload time is nothing short of generous, considering the real mounts, when they were working correctly, only ever achieved a rate of fire of 1.7 rounds a minute, or a roughly 35-second reload. The overall accuracy is also okay. It's not the world's greatest, but you have more than enough rate of fire to make up for the lack of accuracy. This is also the first Royal Navy battleship that feels like it has an anti-aircraft battery that's worth discussing, and while it's not as strong as Gneisenau's or Hood's, at this tier, it's still very respectable, and I would put it at a notch above Colorado's current anti-aircraft suite. The ship's stealth is also noteworthy, as her detection range is only 12.2 kilometers, and this allows the ship to disappear easily between shots. This can make King George V one of the more annoying enemies to face if you're not looking directly at her when she fires. So as you can kind of imagine, if you've played the US battleships starting with the North Carolina and culminating in Montana, you kind of have an idea of how this ship is going to play with that 12.2 kilometer detection range. For one, this is an absolutely brutal range, as most cruisers at this tier pretty much are in that same concealment range, like 11-ish kilometers, and so they really don't have much warning before they receive 10 14-inch shells coming their way. So the overall goal there with the playstyle is you want to hang around the 12 to 15 kilometer range unless it's safe to aggressively push. And when you do that, you have more than enough accuracy to repeatedly light battleships on fire or to punish broadside cruisers and battleships with AP. Let's cover some stats and upgrades quick, and then we'll go look at how that pans out in the battle video. In terms of hit points, 60,500 hit points, which if I remember correctly is more than... I know for a fact it's more than Colorado. I think it's more than Nagato as well, but I don't know how it compares to Gneisenau, as I don't have Gneisenau handy at the moment. 381 millimeters of armor. This is 15 inches of armor, and it is right there in the belt. It is an impressive amount of armor on board this ship. Torpedo damage reduction of only 24%. And that's part of a real-world nod to, the sinking of the Prince of Wales, which the TDS did not prove to be very reliable at keeping out torpedoes. But of course, only one torpedo actually hit the TDS during that engagement. The main battery consists of 10 14-inch guns, 8 of which are in 2 quad mounts. That would be the A turret and the X or Y turret. And then you have a single dual mount in the B position or number 2 position. Secondary battery consists of 8 dual 134 millimeter or 5 1/4 inch 50 caliber Mark 1 dual purpose gun mounts. They have a range of 5.3 kilometers. That's going to be without advanced firing training. Your main battery has a range of 18.1 kilometers, 42% fire chance on the main battery for HE, and 10,500 damage on the AP shell. Pretty respectable overall, and like I said, the reload is more than generous. Plus, the ship has a 180-degree turn time of 38.3 seconds, which, feels pretty comfortable. Especially coming off of Queen Elizabeth, which is just glacial. Anti-aircraft defense, it's going to look very familiar. Your long-range DPS is going to come from those 134mm guns, your 5 1/4 inch guns, 65 DPS at 4.5 kilometers. This is without any AA upgrades, so by the time you get to a full 19-point captain, this ship's AA is going to be pretty potent. Then it steps down to 2.5 kilometers in a set of 6-8 octuple 40mm pom-pom gun mounts. That's what they look like. And there's also 2 quad mounts, and that's what those look like. And then your short-range AA is going to be in 4 dual 20mm Oerlikons and 14 single 20mm Oerlikons. Maximum speed is going to be 29.4 knots. That's going to be with the speed flag. We'll drop that real quick. I think it's 28. Yep, 28 even for the max speed without the speed flag. 790 meter turning radius, which is pretty good for this tier. I mean, it's not the best. I think Colorado holds down the best maneuverability, but Colorado is also a U.S. standard battleship, so 640 rough on meters for those. Rudder shift time of 12 seconds, which is pretty good. Detection range by sea, 12.2 kilometers. Detection range by air of 10.8. All right, let's talk about upgrades. In the first upgrade slot, I am going to recommend Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. And this gives you 100% increase or doubling of your anti-aircraft and secondary battery mounts hit point pool. So doubling the hit points of your anti-aircraft is only going to keep it in the fight longer, which means that you're going to be a menace to aircraft carriers for much longer. Main Armaments Mod 1 would also not be a bad choice in this. King George V's turrets are far more reliable than, like Warspite or Queen Elizabeth's are, or any of the lower tier ones. But you could run this too if you don't want to run Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. Of course, Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1, the reason why we're running this is because we have preventative maintenance on the captain, which is taking over where Main Armaments Mod 1 would have been. So Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 is the one that I would choose. Of course, if you want to avoid the hood fate, you could always run Magazine Mod 1 for 70% reduction in the chance of your ship getting detonated. In the second slot, and this is going to be post-change, so some of my older videos have these kind of mixed up a little bit, so bear with me. But in the second slot, I'm running Damage Control Systems Mod 1 for the minus 3% and the chance of flooding, as well as the 3% reduction in your in the torpedo damage. Propulsion Mod 1 and Steering Gears Mod 1, neither of these two modifications really apply to battleships because they have enough armor that their engines and rudders don't get taken out very often. And usually when they do, they can take enough hits that it's not an issue for them to have to wait for their damage control party to come up to repair it. In the third slot, I'm running Aiming Systems Mod 1 for the minus 7% to the dispersion of the main battery. The plus 5% to the secondary battery firing range and minus 5% to the dispersion of the secondary battery is just kind of it's nice, but it's not the reason why I'm taking it. This is more or less I'm going to call it the selfish option. AA Guns Mod 2 is another fantastic upgrade at this. This is going to boost that AA range an additional 20%. And I would recommend either of those two options for the third slot. In the fourth slot, Maneuverability reigns king, and I prefer Steering Gears Mod 2 for the 20% reduction in rudder shift time. At this tier, there's not really anything else that I would consider viable. Some people are going to say Damage Control Systems Mod 2 for the 15% reduction in the time it takes to recover from either a fire or flood, and I guess a case could be made for that. But these ships aren't really designed to be tanking ships anyway. They're fantastic support ships. And we don't have the super heal yet to really make it worthwhile, building a zombie build. So don't see a good use for Damage Control Systems Mod 2 at this tier. All right, enough of talking about this ship in port. Let's go look at it in a battle video. All right, so King George V, like I said, the battle style is going to be very reminiscent of the North Carolina or Iowa's play style where you shoot, you disappear, you shoot, you disappear, you shoot, you disappear. Hopefully we'll get to see that some in this battle video. It is a Tier 7 fight on the map Neighbors, and it seems like the map is loaded up pretty heavily with Tier 5 and Tier 6 ships. So take that for what it's worth. No aircraft carriers in the game, and with my usual battle strategy on this map, I tend to go towards sea. I just prefer the islands to continually break cover all the time, and I think that that's probably the easiest way to play on this map, and it really, really takes advantage of the ship's ability to just break contact, maneuver, and then shoot again at a different location, and that can catch people off guard if they're not prepared for it. So we're going to head up towards sea. And, we'll get a quick look here at the gun angles. You can see the turrets traverse very well. You can also see that I am running the spotting plane. Just messing around with my thought process on the spotting planes. Just with the recent, it's been almost 6 months since it happened, but when they nerfed the flight time of the catapult fighters on battleships, and kind of playing around finally after a long time with the spotting plane and seeing if I can just use that a little bit to kind of help out with the damage output. You can see I'm helping Mr. Warwolf X in chat. He was in a battle prior to this, actually the battle immediately prior to this in his New York, and he was struggling a little bit, so I was trying to give him some tips. And Special Destroyer Fubuki reporting. Don't call you Buki, so I'm going to call you Buki. You should be hearing Congo in your head if you've seen Kenkoi. So we're headed up towards sea, and like I said, the overall goal of going up there is just to be able to engage and disengage more effectively, and well, we're kind of out of options to shoot at the beginning. Ooh, Nicholas, that would actually be a good ship to shoot at. So we're gonna engage if we can get him to. Oh, that was way over lead. He's slowing down. I don't think we're gonna get any hits. If we do, it might get one. Yeah, one. So we got one over pen for exactly 1,050 damage. Still continuing the train towards sea. We got ourselves a Cleveland. We got a Miyoko that's headed up that way. It looks like we got a Königsberg. Maybe even a König that's headed up that way. Nicholas is still hanging out somewhere in the middle, we think. But there's a Cleveland up there. Alright. Yes, the chat is a flurry right now. So one other thing that I see a lot from other King George V players is they have a tendency to sail around broadside. And yes, your ship has an impossible to find citadel for enemy battleships, but please do yourself a huge... Wow, look at that shell grouping. I'll take that. A citadel, 2 normal pens, 2 overpens. Whoa! That was 19,000 damage right there. Well over half that Miyoko's hit point pool. What I find is they sail broadside all the time, and while your citadel is impossible to hit, it is still very easy to lop off massive amounts of damage from these ships. I mean, you're not invulnerable. So sailing around broadside, you do have to be extremely careful. That Miyoko gets very lucky and beaches himself there. Very fortunate. And yes, immediately gets set on fire twice. Why? Because raisins. Apparently somebody lit the deck on... just doused the deck in gasoline. There was 3k worth of damage. That's one thing I don't like about this ship's durability. The durability comes almost entirely from armor piercing. You can bounce armor piercing pretty effectively with this ship. What you cannot do is get rid of that high explosive damage, and that has to do with your... it has to do with your ship's... wow, that would have been a great salvo if I would have not let it as much. You only have enough deck armor really to auto-bounce AP shells, not enough to stop most HE shells from causing massive amounts of damage at this tier. So that Miyoko is basically dead. Let's see if we can't add a Königsberg to the list of ships here that we're going to shoot at. And nope, we're going to spend more time chatting and not paying it. Ooh! Oh, we slowed down when Island got in the way. Dang. Well, had it been Johnny on it and not typing, probably could have gotten ourselves a death strike on a broadside Königsberg. That was basically stationary. Down goes their Fubuki. Well, that's kind of sad. We have one cap. It looks like the vast majority of their team went south towards A. That is not a strategy on this map that I would recommend. You can see how far it takes all of your ships out of the fight. Now, I'm not exactly being the best leader here because, in truth, I'm not exactly in position either. You know, I've gone a little bit too far north to effectively support the B cap, and we've got all of our battleships except for Mr. Wolf and his New York down south. Or no, that's not his New York. We got a different New York down south, and, well, that always comes with its own list of problems. So this Cleveland is nothing short of an annoyance. I'm going to try and turn in as best we can. Gun angles on the ship really aren't that fantastic. You really have to expose a large part of your ship to really get shots out. So there was 7,100 damage. Just taken right off of that Congo. Congo, of course, being a Tier 5 battleship, I don't think it has sufficient armor to stop an overmatch of its bow. So you can see here we've managed to disappear, but not enough to disappear and not eat a whole bunch of damage. We have been alternating between, high speed, full flank speed, and stopped. And the whole premise behind that, of course, being to prevent ourselves from overextending. Another salvo there on the Congo, turning away, only 3,100 damage. Overall, battle tactics-wise, team is ahead on ship kills, kind of lacking in capture points. We've got enough points up ahead that it's not too much of an issue, just something to keep in mind. We do eventually need to turn south, so let's see if we can't add ourselves a Königsberg here. And I have a feeling that's going to be way over lead unless he decides... Yeah, he's pointed almost completely away from me. Well, pretty much a wasted salvo. Not really doing the best with, ships with the ships that I have to shoot at here, but we're going to continue to push in. We're going to finally turn south eventually and try and No, that's not. Fubar is not German. Eventually going to turn south here and try and get towards the cap. It's English for, yep, that. So, Cleveland, you can see him pop up there. Königsberg popped up there. I'm finally detected. I think that's by the Congo. So if we slow up a little bit here, we can disappear again. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to shoot a salvo of HE here. Now watch, Congo's a tier 5, so I'm not terribly surprised by this, but only 2,000 damage in 5 shell hits. But we managed to start a fire. Now that doesn't seem like much, but he's burning. And he will continue to burn, and burn, and burn, and burn. And we're going to shoot another salvo at him, and hopefully this time we can actually get a kill on him, even though he's on fire in 2 places. Nope. 1,000 damage. Well, we got them with the fire, so that'll work. I'll take that. Managed to get the kill, and finally we are turning south. We've got ourselves really out of position. I would not recommend going this far north. Usually I like to stay between the B and C cap. Occasionally you'll see me a little bit further north into the C cap, but not where I'm at right now. Just a little too far forward. Another 4,100 damage with AP on that Königsberg. Getting some back and forth here in this video of shell type switching, but overall really not that much back and forth. We've managed to take a decent amount of damage and repaired a large chunk of it back too. So really hoping to stay invisible to these guys, because this cruisers that are angled away like this are extremely hard to deal with. You basically have to wait for them to get bored and either find another target that they turn broadside to you, or that you get lucky enough for them to turn into a salvo or something like that. You really have to be patient in order to take them out, because they're angled in such a way that they can pretty effectively just completely avoid all of your shells, because they're 14k away. That doesn't seem like much. Come on, Cleveland, pop back up. It'll be fun, they said. Travel the world, they said. Yeah, we're just going to recreate ourselves some Duke of York action here. We're going to go find ourselves some Scharnhorst. Maybe we can lop a good chunk of his hit point pool off. No. We're going to miss. Interestingly enough, in that battle, I think out of the some 20-odd salvos that the Duke of York fired, they straddled with 21 of them. But the vast majority of those were fired at extremely close range. Okay, York. York is very soft and squishy. We just need to get around the edge of this island. Maybe we'll get lucky and land some Citadel hits or Dev Strike him. Oh, it looks good. No Citadel hits. Must be the luckiest York alive. I did underlead him a little bit, so that's something to keep in mind. But, okay. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to turn away. There's their King George V. That's definitely a credible threat. Well, I want to see if we can't get another salvo off on this York here. Maybe get him out of this fight. Be nice to get rid of it. Let's see. Oh, look. This is a pretty good shell grouping. Only 6,000 damage. Luckiest York alive. Man, if that was me doing my how to play video for the York, I would have gotten deleted, immediately deleted. Alright, well, this time I think we're going to get him. If we do 6,000 damage again, oh, there's an island in the way. Well, I suppose. We probably won't kill him. Or we will finally get our Citadel for 5,600 damage. Up to 61,000 damage, and it started to kite away there because there wasn't a whole lot of pushing going on, but more importantly, we've got ourselves a broadside battleship over here that I would like to engage. Unfortunately, there's an island here as well, and, well, we only got 4 rounds out, basically the rear turrets. We got 3,400 damage from it, not too bad. Maybe we can push this King George V and continue on. That's that Cleveland and that Königsberg that was shooting at me. Just super annoying. Like I said, Extremely capable. Okay, so King George V, sailing broadside. This is what I was talking about earlier. Don't want to do this too often because, well, he got lucky this time. There's 6,900. Ooh, Farragut. When you're stuck in this situation, you've got a choice to make: torpedoes or the battleship that is shooting HE at you. I think I'm gonna risk going broadside to the battleship that is shooting HE at me to engage this Farragut, because let's face it, Farragut has torpedoes. They're particularly lethal torpedoes. Ooh, he is shooting AP at me. Oh, 4,400 damage. Okay, rear turret comes into play. Ooh, that was a very pretty grouping, but didn't do anything. Where did those come from? Well, they got 2 destroyers left. Oi. Well, that's no good. Well, we have a choice to make once again. We need to get away from this Farragut because he definitely has the ability to hit us. But the good news is Farragut's torpedo range is only 6.4 kilometers, which means he has to come within detection range, as he is right now, in order to use his guns, or in order to use his torpedoes. Unfortunately, you can see this thing takes a boatload of HE shell damage. Just look at how quickly it's whittled me down here. Oh my goodness. Lopping off huge amounts of HP just from hitting. I'm glad that this island is in the way. And I'm glad that fire damage can be repaired 100%. There's a second fire, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to burn our repair party. I swear if that stupid Cleveland lands one shell hit that starts me on fire after that's on cooldown, I'm going to be very upset. Okay, so tactically, map position-wise, we are still ahead on ship kills, which is more important in the long run here. We do have a Mutski here that we want to pay attention to. Up to 77,000 damage. Mutski is about to die, so okay, we can safely ignore that. We've got 10 seconds until our repair party is back up and we can get some of our hit point pool, but ooh, look at that! Torpedoes. Who would have thought? Oh man. Yeah, that could have been very ugly had I not just slammed on the brakes. Well, I guess we can go back to that discussion about a sixth sense. You know, I was reading the other day, interestingly enough, that are you aware that humans actually have more than 6 senses? Does anyone truthfully care? I don't know. Anyway, broadside Cleveland, this is what I was talking about. You gotta basically wait for him to be completely non-existent and non-paying attention to you. 10k off of him. Very good hit overall. Would have loved to have a Citadel, but we took 8k even while angled from their King George V. That's because the rear angles on these guns are not nearly as good. The rear ability, the ability of the rear to tank shells is not nearly as strong as it is for the front, obviously, because the rear has a little bit fatter and squattier profile. So we are once again down to 8,000 hit points. They are ahead in overall points. How can we possibly turn this around, you might ask? Well, how about that? Well, we just sank their Königsberg, our Mutski doing some work. Got their King George V basically not paying attention. We've gone ahead and we've switched to HE here to see if we can't burn some people, but we'll take 7,200 damage off of that King George V anyway. And we will continue our valiant effort here to try and sink them. 5 seconds until our repair party consumable is up. Can't come soon enough. At this point, we only have 1 fire. That's only because we've only fired like 3 or 4 salvos of HE this entire match. And to some, that would be sacrilegious, but I'll be honest, I think this ship's pretty versatile both ways. Well, once again, oh, how about 2 fires and 1 salvo? Only 4,000 damage, but I'll take my 2 fires. Once again, we are shelling the island there. Apparently the ship wants to relive its glory days of being an island bombarder. Up to 105,000 damage. The phrase, but I'm not done yet, comes to mind. That time we managed to avoid hitting the island, but we would have missed that Farragut anyway. Underled him. That is one problem that I've had with this ship, is I'm so used to playing like the US battleships and all that. It's very, very difficult for me to reacquire how to aim with these guns. Just one thing that, if you're going to play this ship, play it enough that you get used to the guns. Because the 14-inch guns are good, but they are not the strongest in the world. At this point, we are retreating. We are kiting. There's another fire for this King George V, trying to turn to bring the guns back around. By this point, we have all three of the caps. This Atlanta is presenting a much bigger threat than I am, so the King George V isn't concentrated on me. There's high caliber. I was kind of hoping that this King George V would get spotted again. Well, that's very polite. We might pull a Notzer here. There's an island there that I'm trying to turn inside of. Whether or not I will get that accomplished is a different story. And down goes the King George V to an Atlanta fire. Not mine. 112,000 damage. That Cleveland is way outside of our 18.1 kilometer range. But overall, this match has been pretty good. I hope you guys can kind of see from this match how you need to kind of play the ship. A little bit of passive play actually goes a long way to really helping the ship out. It's just a... like, as you can see, it doesn't deal with high explosive shell spam nearly as well as other battleships do. And as a result, it's a little bit harder to play at times. And if you play in that 12 to 15 kilometer range, that's usually the best range. But there are other ranges that you can play at. Longer ranges I wouldn't recommend. Shell travel time is a little ridiculous at times. Harder to hit things at longer ranges. Okay, Cleveland. Well, we'll lop another 3K off the Cleveland for 115,010 damage, and I have a feeling that will be our last salvo of the match, as our Atlanta opens fire, and the match has 40 seconds remaining. Oh, maybe we can get another salvo off here. With 35 seconds remaining, we should be able to get one, but he is turning too much, and we are not going to get the hit before the Ernst Gade gets it. Overall, King George V is pretty fun to play. Like I said, the AP and HE are both very viable. You can see it in this battle video. I mean, we've got 4 fires and like 6 salvos of HE. Finished first on our team with 1,798 damage. A little over, XP, a little over 1.1 million in potential damage, which isn't fantastic for a battleship, but overall, really like King George V. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.